Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Vanessa stared thoughtfully out the window as the nurses went back and forth in the hospital courtyard. The janitor was clearing snow from the paths. There was a lot of snow this year. It had been a long time since there had been such a blizzard, which would completely metal the roads, in a matter of minutes hiding the traces of car tires and human feet. The woman thought she had gotten off easy when she got to the hospital. She could have been lying in a cemetery by now. She touched the bandage on her head with her hand. The pain underneath was still intense. As she fell, Vanessa hit her head on the corner of the closet, lost consciousness, and when she woke up, she realized she was in the hospital and nothing was threatening her yet, but only for now. Sooner or later, she'd have to go home. And their daughter-in-law, Vanessa, sleeps and sees how she will become a full-fledged owner of the luxurious apartment of her mother-in-law. Wendy does not even make any secret of the fact that she has a lover and goes to him on dates. And Vanessa's son, like a blind kitten, doesn't notice or doesn't want to notice anything. "Kevin, hello," said the woman, dialing the notary's phone number. "How is your health?" "Precious. You're our man." "Oh, Vanessa, what's health now? Even for the rich, it has become a dream. And for a simple man like your humble servant, Kevin, not even within reach. The whole body hurts, I'll tell you. But if you ignore some parts, you can live a little longer." The old Jewish notary laughed into the telephone receiver. "Kevin, I'd really like to meet you." "What's this about?" "Vanessa, come to my office anytime." This man was always happy to see the daughter of his old friend and the wife of his longtime friend David, who unfortunately is no longer alive. No, Vanessa said hastily. "I can't do it myself. The thing is, I'm in the hospital." "My God, what's wrong with you?" The man was worried. "I'm fine now. But I'd like you to draw up a paper for me from old Kevin. Everybody just wants a paper nowadays. I'll tell you. It used to be." Vanessa knew the notary, who was a member of her parents' house, very well. If he started going into flashbacks, it would be impossible to stop the old man. And she wasn't ready for long stories about the intricacies of Kevin's fate, so she tried to interrupt him. "So you'll be able to come?" She asked a little louder than she had spoken before. Of course, Vanessa," the notary assured her. "Your late father, peace be upon him, asked me not to refuse your requests that concern the legal side. What hospital will I be at tomorrow morning?" Vanessa dictated the address of the hospital to Kevin and disconnected the phone. She has to do this because her sister-in-law is getting naughty. That country wench is a grabber. The tigresses are about to throw first her and then Vanessa's son out on the street. Lately, it has become abundantly clear to the woman the purpose of Wendy marrying her girl. Such predatory women do not disdain any methods to achieve their goal. And the purpose of daughter-in-law Vanessa was a luxury apartment on the central street of the city with windows on the waterfront and 3-meter ceilings, decorated with antique stucco, as well as a bank account inherited from her late husband. The apartment was inherited by the woman from her parents. In this apartment, she was happy with her beloved husband. Here from the maternity hospital, they brought twins Sebastian and Jenna together. The voice of one of the nursing staff called out from the hallway, "Lunch, lunch." Her roommates rose from their beds and headed for the door. It was lunchtime, but Vanessa did not move. She continued to lie there. After the stroke, the entire right side of the woman's body was paralyzed. That's why breakfast, lunch, and dinner were brought directly to her room. So it happened this time. The nurse came in with a tray, put the plates on the nightstand, and sat down next to her on the table to feed the woman. She slowly scooped soup and noodles with a spoon, brought them to Vanessa's mouth, and said, "You really need to gain strength to recover, so don't mind. Eat." Vanessa obediently opened her mouth. A little bit of fighting. She said to the nurse, "Thank you, Sophia, for your kindness. Take some candy from the nightstand on the shelf. I have nothing else to thank you for yet." The nurse tried to refuse at first, but then decided it was better not to argue with a sick woman. She needs her rest. She'll take the box of treats so as not to upset the sick woman. Why don't your family come to care for you? She asked Vanessa, adjusting her pillow. There is no one, Sophia. The woman answered sadly. My son is away on business almost all the time, trying to earn money for his young wife. And the daughter-in-law, could she come at least once a day? At least give you some home-cooked food. We don't have very good food in the hospital, you see. My sister-in-law has no time for me, Vanessa replied. In the year that Wendy had lived with them in the same apartment, she had never become close to Vanessa. The girl did not consider her mother-in-law at all. On the contrary, did everything to get rid of her. Wendy constantly scandalized with Vanessa, and their last quarrel was the reason that the woman went to the hospital. Don't worry, Sophia assured the nurse. On my shift, I'll be sure to take care of you. She started carrying the woman home-cooked food, spoon-feeding her, taking out the duck. And Vanessa thought when I was discharged, I should give this girl money, take care of her like a close acquaintance, always coming to check on her before she even got on shift. Vanessa was born in the family of a large official, Sebastian Smith. Parents were already not young, and such a mom and dad. Also, they say, age parents. But for Vanessa, they were always the best. The girl's mom was the director of a weaving factory. She spent all her time at work. Williams kept the apartment and her daughter in order. A woman who lived with them in one of the back rooms. For as long as she could remember, Vanessa had always been there. No one called the woman a housekeeper. She had long since become a member of the family, as well as a nanny. Vanessa Williams cleaned the apartment, cooked dinners, forbade the girls pigtails, since her mother was often not at home. Vanessa confided all her secrets to the nanny, and the latter treated her like a daughter, or rather, like a granddaughter. She checked her homework, made sure Vanessa was dressed warmly for walks, knitted socks and mittens for her from sheep yarn. All diseases come from the feet, Williams said for the 100th time, forcing Vanessa to wear wool socks. Feet should always be warm. The girl didn't always obey her nanny, but they were mostly friends. When Vanessa entered the institute, her father brought an older man into the house. Williams would set the table in the large living room, arrange the cutlery, and the mother would greet the father and the guest. Introduce yourselves. Introduce the stranger to his wife and daughter. This is David. He was transferred to our department from another agency, so now we'll be colleagues. We're going to do one big thing. The man had kind, beaming eyes. Very nice, he said, handed the mother ribbons and a bouquet of flowers, and the girl a box of chocolates. Vanessa ran off into the living room. Williams, look what candy David brought. She showed the gift to the babysitter. Don't open the box. Eat normally first, the nanny warned the girl. Williams knew that Vanessa had a sweet tooth and made sure that she had as little candy as possible. At the table that day, there was a relaxed, friendly, almost family-like atmosphere. Vanessa's mom enjoyed keeping the men talking. It seemed fun. After that dinner, David began to frequent the Smith home. Usually, they locked themselves in his father's study, talked about something, and then went out into the living room, where Williams treated the men to tea with girlfriends. One day after such a tea party, David approached Vanessa. Vanessa, could you keep me company? I'd really like to take a walk along the promenade. It's such a beautiful day. It was a nice May day outside the window. The girl had a summer session ahead of her, but she didn't care much about preparing for exams and credits. She was sure that she would pass everything and move to the 5th year of the economics department. Vanessa gladly agreed to David's proposal, received a nod of approval from her father, and went to her room to change. Vanessa will graduate soon, Sebastian told David. I should already be thinking about her future. It's time to find a decent fiancé. I hope that if Vanessa doesn't mind, you will consider my candidacy. The father's colleague asked with a completely serious face. I like your daughter very much, Sebastian. We'll see, the girl's father replied evasively, not depriving the groom of the chance to become his son-in-law. This conversation happened to be overheard by Williams. What did they think? Girls, still to walk, and they were going to marry her off. She thought as she took the dishes into the kitchen. Vanessa enjoyed the walk along the promenade. David was 15 years older than her and told her many interesting things. He even read Bloch's poems. He came to the capital from Siberia. Career. The man quickly went uphill. A true Siberian, David had a strong character and was not afraid of difficulties. He knew that he had a special place in this big city. The only thing that did not work out for the man was with women. It was high time to get married. This hinted and his colleagues. But where to meet a woman who will be a faithful wife and friend when you are constantly at work or on business trips? Sebastian's daughter charmed him at first sight with her directness. The girl was well brought up, studied in one of the best universities in the country. Not bad. Herself. Vanessa and David began to meet sometimes, spent time in cafes, went to the movies and exhibitions. After the session, the girl had a lot of free time. Outside the city, the family had a large dacha in a pine forest. Usually Vanessa and her nanny spent the whole summer there. Williams thought that Vanessa should breathe fresh air, not exhaust fumes, and took her to the dacha. David began to come to their foreign cars to visit them, bringing different goodies. Sitting in the gazebo, they talked about all sorts of things. Only the man did not like questions about his work. "It's the most boring thing I can tell you," he said. Vanessa didn't really insist. She asked more out of politeness how things were going at work and didn't want him to talk about it at all. Williams did not interfere with the young people, but looked out of the window, noticing things that a stranger would not have noticed. For example, she saw the man looking at Vanessa with amorous eyes, how each time he tried to take her hand. But Vanessa was not particularly amenable to such manipulation. Williams brought her up well, taught her that with men you need to keep an ear to the ground. Strictly for our girl Zhenya, their view on the ice case, 15 years older. She should have a young one to run to dances. The woman thought to herself, taking a tray of pies out of the oven. She put tea and treats on a tray and took them to the gazebo. "Enrich yourselves," Williams said, and went into the house. "Your housekeeper's pies are very tasty," praised David. "I can't get enough. I can't get enough. But my hands are still reaching for more." In mid-August, Vanessa and Williams returned to the city. Soon Vanessa will start the most important period. She has to prepare for her diploma. Before the new year, David returned from a business trip. A man came to their apartment. He and his father talked about something in the study for a long time. When they came out, the father told Vanessa and her mother that David wanted to talk to them. "I would like to ask you." He turned to the father's wife, Vanessa, and to Sebastian. "Your daughter's hands. I've been in love with Vanessa for a long time. I promise I'll do anything to make her happy." Cheeks. The girl's proud scarlet coloring. She sat with her eyes down from the doorway. Williams was watching. Now it was time for the groomsmen. Matching David to our girl, she thought. Vanessa's mom smiled like that, and Vanessa agreed. "Did you ask her?" "I'm sorry. No." The groom was embarrassed. "I decided to enlist your support first. But Sebastian and I will be happy to have such a decent and respectable man by our daughter's side. What do you say, daughter?" She looked at Vanessa carefully. She could not say that Vanessa was in love with David, but she definitely liked this adult, intelligent man. He made her feel at ease with him. In all this time, he had never once done anything to push her away from him. "I agree," Vanessa replied, looking into David's eyes. "This case needs to be cleared up," her father said cheerfully, pulling a bottle of champagne from the bar section of the buffet wall. Williams jumped up, setting it on the table and a box of chocolates. Sebastian poured the sparkling wine into glasses, looked around at everyone present, and said, "But now we are calm for our daughter." Advice, as they say, and love. The young all took a dip. The clinking of glasses brought a share of joy and fun in the slightly tense atmosphere of matchmaking. "You'll get your diploma and you can have a wedding. I'll make sure it's the most beautiful and lavish. After all, Vanessa is my only daughter. New Year's Eve was coming. This holiday always gave hope for the best. Everyone was in high spirits. Vanessa felt that a new life and many joyful events were ahead of her, one of which was a wedding. But fate ordered otherwise. When the New Year's vacation was over, the household returned to their usual activities. Vanessa was preparing for the defense of her diploma, and sometimes met with David. Her parents worked and occasionally shared news at dinner, but her father was in a bad mood more and more often. Was he in some kind of trouble at work? Vanessa could hear her mother reassuring her husband. "Everything will work out. Don't worry so much. You have a bad heart." Her father's health left a lot to be desired. He said that he would marry off his daughter and retire. "I will live at the cottage, breathe fresh air, fish, and wait for my daughter to give me grandchildren." Sebastian dreamed. One day, the phone rang in Smith's apartment. Williams answered the phone. Smith's apartment. "I'm listening," she said, in one hand, holding the receiver, and in the other a rag with which she had just dusted off the metal. Nanny's face suddenly turned pale. She, leaning against the wall. Seeing that she was not feeling well, Vanessa ran over to her, snatching the telephone receiver. A man's voice could be heard in it, mouthing something that had started. It had happened in his work office. The ambulance didn't make it in time. Sebastian died before the doctors arrived. A heart attack. Vanessa's temples pounded hard. Her heart was beating feverishly. This can't be happening. This is a mistake, she thought. There were many strangers at the funeral. The funeral procession walked down the cemetery avenue, and there seemed to be no end to it. Behind the coffin walked Vanessa Williams' mother, and David was supporting his fiancée by the elbow. The wife of the deceased was blacker than a cloud. It was as if she had grown older these days, looking more like a long old woman than the blooming leathery woman Vanessa had always seen. As the coffin was lowered into the grave, Vanessa's mother sobbed loudly. David put his arms around her, tried to lead her away. The girl followed them. They were not at the wake, which was organized for colleagues and close friends of Sebastian. At home, they sat silently at the table. The oppressive silence was unbearable. In the morning, Vanessa's mother was found in the bathroom with an empty vial of sleeping pills lying next to her. She was dead. The shocks that had suddenly descended on Vanessa had crippled her. She fell into a severe depression, stopped preparing for the defense of her diploma, lying in her room all the time. David tried to bring her out of this difficult state, but the attempts did not give anything. Williams was mad that Vanessa didn't eat anything, all the time tried to feed the girl, but she only pulled the blanket over her head and turned her back to the wall. "We gotta do something. We have to save our ribbon." Concernedly, she said to David, pouring tea in a cup, "Would you think of something to distract her? I've thought of all kinds of things myself. I don't know how to help her. Why don't we get a doctor?" The nanny suggested it. "Absolutely not," said David. "She's in such a state she could be committed to a mental institution. She didn't even want to think about it. How about I take her to your doctor?" The man said, "There everything is used to the ribbon, and on the other side is calm and quiet. I think a few days surrounded by nature will do her good." "Indeed, go." The housekeeper agreed. "I'll cook you some food. Vanessa, who is not used to kitchen chores, will starve you and herself to death." David's idea had paid off. Vanessa did feel better. Sitting by the fireplace in the evenings, they talked about her parents. The girl remembered her childhood, trips to the sea, trips to the zoo, family holidays. These memories played back to her petrified heart. David realized that, having lost her parents, she needed support and a strong shoulder more than ever. "You know," Vanessa said to her, looking at the fire in the fireplace, "I think your parents are at peace with you now. They know you have me by your side. They have given their consent to our marriage, their blessing. I will take care of you. We'll take care of their graves together, visit often. The grief will gradually become less belligerent. You and I will never forget them. But we must move on." "What do you mean?" Asked Vanessa, I think a lavish wedding is out of the question. A year of mourning at least, but you can't be left alone and unprotected right now. Do you understand? The man took the girl's hand and looked into her eyes. I propose that you and I get married. If I become your husband officially, I can always be there for you. You're probably right, Vanessa replied. She needed David. He's calm. He's caring. She didn't have anyone else so close to her. The man reached out, hugged and kissed her. She felt his strong body, gradually dissolved in his embrace and kisses. Taking the girl in his arms, David proceeded to the bedroom. A month later, they signed the marriage. Just came to the registry office in two, signed the document and exchanged wedding rings. At home, Williams set a festive table. She herself sat down next to the young ones. Solemnly said the woman and raised a glass of champagne. Live happily ever after. Life went on as usual. Vanessa defended her diploma, got a job as an economist, gave herself to work. David was promoted. The responsible position required from him dedication and time. He often went on business trips, but every time he returned, he appeared at the doorstep of their apartment with a bouquet of flowers and gifts for his beloved wife. They became very close, dear people. Despite being busy, they used every opportunity to be together. In summer, they went on vacation to the sea, and in winter, they spent time at the dacha, enjoying snowy landscapes and pine aroma. The spouses dreamed of children. But Vanessa is not pregnant. She went to the doctor several times, but the gynecologist said that her health was fine. David refused to go to the hospital, saying he didn't have time for this nonsense. He was healthy, and it was just, apparently, not yet their time to become parents. Lying in the hospital room, Vanessa thought that she had brought up her son correctly. He was her helper. But her daughter, the woman tried not to think about her daughter Jenna, because every time she thought about her, her heart ached. It had been 10 years since Vanessa and David had gotten married. They were preparing to celebrate Vanessa's husband's 50th birthday with Williams. The woman was putting together the menu when suddenly she felt a bad feeling a little wash over Neil's eyes. A nasty lump came to her throat. Noticing something amiss, Williams brought a better glass of water. Worried about her health, Vanessa asked her, "Yes, I'll go swear in later. Yes, doing our business with you." Vanessa mumbled and went to the bedroom. Despite the lack of children, she and David were happy. Her husband loved Vanessa without memory, protected her from trouble, made sure that she didn't need anything. He kept his word to her parents, and Vanessa was happy with him. Every day she felt more and more warmth toward this man who was already starting to sit up. When David came home from work, Williams met him in the hallway. "Where is Vanessa?" the man asked. "Resting in your bedroom. She wasn't feeling well, so she lay down," said the woman, taking David's coat from his hands. "Are you going to have dinner?" "I'll go and see how Vanessa is feeling later." The man went to the bedroom, and she lay there with her eyes closed. Vanessa seemed to be asleep, but she was just immersed in her thoughts. She didn't hear her husband enter. He quietly sat down on the bed, took his wife by the hand. "Darling, what's the matter with you? Are you tired or sick?" Carefully, tenderly asked David. "Yes, I felt sick. So I lay down," replied the wife. "You should see a doctor. I will arrange to take you to the clinic tomorrow. It will pass. Sebastian, don't worry." Vanessa tried to refuse to see the doctor. She hated going to hospitals. "Don't even argue, or I'll rope you in and drag you by force," her husband joked. The next day, as promised, he took Vanessa to the clinic, where she was examined. It turned out that the reason for the woman's indisposition was pregnancy. The spouses were beyond happy. And Williams, having learned the happy news, started to bake a holiday cake. "This is the best gift for my anniversary," David marveled. "I can't imagine what could make me so happy. How much I love you, my dear." At the first ultrasound, it became clear that Vanessa and David were having twins. "Oh, my goodness," my husband said happily. to shoot 2 kids at once for the sake of 2 kids at once. The second medical screening showed that a boy and a girl would be born. The spouses were glowing with happiness, and a son and a daughter at one time. Sister and brother will be friendly, always support each other, and parents will try to bring them up worthily. Despite the fact that the pregnancy was hard and Vanessa had to go to the hospital from time to time, childbirth went without complications. The first to the light was Alyosha, and 2 minutes later Vanessa heard the cry of the girl's son. The parents came up with names for the children in advance. The girl decided to call Jenna because that was the name of the late mother David, and the boy in honor of Dad Vanessa. The daughter was born chubby, strong, and the boy was born weak, weighed only 2 kilograms, 600 grams. For several days he was not brought to his mother. Vanessa was worried, but the doctor said that it was normal for twins to be born and that everything would be fine. David came to the maternity hospital every day to visit his wife. As a respected man in the city, he could not refuse visits. Every time he entered the room with a bouquet of flowers and a bag of fruit, smile a happy smile. "How are my birds doing?" The man would bend over to the babies and admire their cute little flyers, touch their fingers, take them in his arms, and walk around the ward. "How happy I am, my dear. Pretty soon there will be lots of baby laughter in our house. Those little feet will be running from room to room, and Williams will follow them with porridge and cakes." The couple laughed and rejoiced at the birth of their children. They were now mom and dad, and 2 adorable little ones. How happy their grandparents would be together with them. The fact that the parents did not live to see this joyous event was the only reason to be a little sad. Everything else in life seemed rainbow and cloudless, but the children grew surprisingly distant from each other. Unlike the other twins, who, as people say, are always together and almost never apart, Jenna and Sebastian were not friends. They often fought over toys at school, occupied desks away from each other, and never played together in the yard. Parents did not understand this behavior. You have to stand up for each other. You were in the womb together, weren't you? We were almost born at the same time. And you're taking it? Once again, the father reprimanded his daughter and son. "Aren't you ashamed? Sebastian poured black paint on my drawing, and now I have to paint again. To hand in my homework to the teacher, she tearfully complained. 'Daddy, it wasn't me, she pushed me.' That's why the paint spilled," Sebastian justified. "Stop it," the father said sternly. "You are brother and sister, so you should help each other, not quarrel. Go home, here, and make up now." The children's truce did not last long. They quarreled constantly, easily finding reasons to quarrel. As they grew older, they fought even more violently. One day Jenna from cut with scissors favored t-shirt money. Then the guy took her hairspray and ruined her dress, which was prepared for the prom at school. Parents rushed into the room at the noise. The kids are all grown up now, about to graduate from high school, fought desperately like street teenagers, and the father dragged Jenna and Sebastian to different corners. "This is unthinkable," he scolded his offspring. "You're not just sibling twins. You're supposed to be one, but you're constantly pulling away. When will it finally stop? I'm asking you." "Soon, Daddy," Jenna said. "Soon, I'll go to college and leave you. Then live here with your favorite girl." Because the son was born weak, his parents, without realizing it, did more favors for him than Jenna, and the girl took offense to that. She was an excellent student, drew beautifully, gave great hopes in art school, dreamed of entering the Academy of Painting. Sebastian studied mediocre, often brought home unsatisfactory marks, but his parents did not scold him for this. Again and again they hired tutors, hoping that the guy will pass the state exams well and will be able to enter the university. Vanessa was most of all worried about her son's future. Sometimes, when they were alone, Vanessa would tell her husband, "You must support Sebastian. Get the support of people you know, to get him into the institute if he doesn't get a passing grade." "I'm not sure about that," David replied. So why was the wife getting nervous? "First of all, it's very ugly. I will go to the offices of officials, and ask for the guy. How do you envision it? Don't you think it's humiliating for me? And second of all, stop patronizing him. I understand that you're going to say that your son will be a child to you all his life, but he's an adult. He should take care of his future. David could give many more arguments, but when he noticed tears in his wife's eyes, he instantly stopped upsetting her. He promised that he would do everything. Sebastian would go to university. Meanwhile, the time of the exams was approaching. Vanessa was worried because recently she had been summoned to school by her son and daughter's class teacher. The teacher was worried about Daima's progress. He doesn't do his homework at all. She complained to the mother of her pupil. He almost doesn't work at lessons. He answers uncertainly at the blackboard. I understand that he is no longer a first grader, but you still need to control Sebastian. Please pay attention to this. Vanessa and David walked together at the presentation of their diplomas. Today, their children will receive the main document, which in many ways will determine their future destiny. Jenna is the pride of our school, the principal said, handing the girl a high school diploma and a gold medal. Demon's document, however, was full of threes. It was very upsetting Vanessa. At home, she started talking to her husband again, so that he could get her son into the institute, using his connections. Look, Vanessa, David said affectionately, with such grades and unwillingness to learn, maybe it would be better for him to enter technical school. And if he gets a profession and goes to work, he will become independent. Vanessa sighed. She realized that her husband was right. Sebastian didn't show any ability in his studies at school. What made her think that the boy would do well at the institute, or that David would have to appeal to influential acquaintances every session so that professors would leave his son credits and good grades? In the end, Vanessa agreed. Sebastian enrolled in college. Jenna realized her dream, enrolled in the Academy of Painting, and left for Peter for her parents and grown children. Nothing changed in their lives, except that the apartment became quiet, quarrels, and fights stopped. Sebastian met his future bride in college. The girl finished 9 grades in her small town and went to the capital for a beautiful life. The guy met with her for a year, but did not tell his parents anything. Lately, the father felt badly. Doctors even recommended that he lie in the hospital, but the man waved them off. No way. It's not for me to lie in a hospital bed. He was very worried about his daughter. Jenna was studying and living away from home. She didn't visit even for vacations. She didn't call. And when her parents dialed her number, she spoke one-wordedly and reluctantly. She was offended at them for the fact that all her life they have been favoring her brother in all his indulgence. And now, at his age, many people already work or work part-time, as she herself, selling paintings. And this brat continues to sit on his parents' necks. David had long wanted to hint to his son that it was time to become independent, but every time he postponed this conversation, so as not to worry his wife. Vanessa as if did not notice that Sebastian was no longer a snotty boy, but a grown man. When she heard the sound of the door opening, she rushed to the kitchen to heat Sebastian's dinner. She always gave money for expenses, even though her husband forbade her to spoil her offspring. When David found out she was slipping her son money again, he grumbled. Jenna herself lives away from us, selling her paintings. She hasn't asked for a dime in all this time. 1 year old, and all the time she's coddling him like a little kid. Stop it. It's time he became a man. Why do you and Jenna want to live away from your parents' house? Let her live like that. Vanessa shouted. Sebastian had been getting it from her all his life, like a cat and a dog. Let him enjoy the peace now. Didn't you give Jenna money quietly? And now you're probably putting it on a card as soon as you get a chance. Don't compare, Vanessa. Sebastian's a man. He should act like one, not sit under his mother's skirt. David was angry. His face instantly turned a shade of purple. He's not sitting. Vanessa continued to defend her son. She was offended that it was possible to play on her favorite. He's studying, getting a profession, just like you wanted. When he gets his diploma, he'll go to work. It's hard enough for him now. But of course, your Sebastian is having a hard time with something that other people don't have a problem with. And Spartacus, David, you suddenly grabbed your heart and fell on the couch. What's with you and your wife running around him? Are you sick? Wait, I'll get some medicine from the kitchen. The woman ran away, took out the medicine cabinet, quickly went through the pills and vials with medicines, poured a glass of water. When she returned to the living room, the spouse was dead. The EMTs had diagnosed a heart attack. Jenna arrived on the day of the funeral. She quietly entered the apartment. The mirrors in the rooms were covered with black scarves. The mother sat at the table, unmoving. "Hello, Mother," the girl said. Vanessa didn't even turn her head. Jenna approached, put her arm around her mother's shoulders, and said quietly, "Hold on." But Vanessa jerked away from her. She hadn't shed a tear at the funeral, just stood silent. When the coffin was lowered into the grave, she walked over and threw a clod of earth first. Slowly, she walked away. Sebastian followed her. Jenna waited until the cross was placed on the grave, placed a large basket of red carnations at the headboard. The wake was being held at home. Only relatives and a few of David's colleagues came. Everyone had something nice to say about the deceased. Jenna decided to speak up. Dad was a wonderful man. He was loved and respected by everyone. He was an authority in the service and an authority in the family for us, his children. You killed him. Vanessa looked up from the table. They looked at the woman in surprise. It was you he was worried about, and his aching heart couldn't take it. Tailed back the first chance she got, went far away and left her father and mother. And now you say you loved him. Is that what loving children do? Killing your own father is what you are. Mom, are you saying something like that? Jenna exclaimed. Why are you calling me Daddy's killer? Because you're the reason we argued the day he died. You made him so nervous that his heart couldn't take it. You tore his heart to shreds. I'll never forgive you. Vanessa dropped her head on her hand, and Jenna jumped out of the house. The guests, one by one, quietly got up and left. They had witnessed a disgusting scene. Vanessa had been observing mourning for her husband for a year. She and her son had gone to visit his father's grave. As they cleaned up the collected grass, the woman wailed, "If you knew how hard it is for us without you, my dear. The girl and I are all alone. Williams has gone to her village. I'm all alone on the farm. Your Jenna hasn't called at all. She hasn't even come to the grave. She hasn't brought flowers for her father. Your favorite." Vanessa, lost in herself, didn't even notice how Jenna quietly approached the beds. In her hands were red roses. "Hello, Mom," she said it through force, as if it was very difficult to say the words, and yet the evil mother said it. Conscience gnawed at her. "Come on, Sebastian." They left, and Jenna put flowers on the grave. She took a rag out of the bag and wiped the monument clean of dust. She had something to tell her father. A few months ago, Jenna had given birth to a son. They say that if in 1 year someone in a family passes away and another person is born at once, he will make up for the loss, replacing the grieving relatives of the deceased. Jenna spoke, turning to the picture on the monument. "Thanks to Nikitka, I'm relieved. Dad, he looks a lot like you, his grandfather. Ah, if you had seen him, you would have loved my baby and your grandson very much." The morning at home, Vanessa put the mourning bandage back on her head. Sebastian, who came in for breakfast, shook his head sadly. "Mommy, don't you think you should stop grieving for your father? You can't bring him back. You have to move on. Life goes on." He took a piece of bread, spread butter on it, and put 2 slices of cheese on top. "All the more so because I have important news for you that I've been wanting to share with you for a long time. I didn't dare because I've seen you killing on Daddy." "What is the news, son?" Vanessa asked. "I have a girlfriend. We've been dating for a long time. We met in college." The boy's eyes shone at the memory of his beloved. "Her name is Wendy, and she's very beautiful." The mother smiled, stroked her son's head. "The girl must be very beautiful indeed, since my Sebastian's eyes shine so much," she thought. Tomorrow I want you to meet her, and I'll cook you something nice for dinner. Of course, son, bring her to our house. Don't worry about dinner and treats." Vanessa suddenly felt her soul begin to heat up with this news. Her son was in love, and maybe soon he would marry. She would have a daughter-in-law to help her mother-in-law take care of the babies. And Vanessa herself. All the next day, she glowed in the kitchen. Vanessa was patronizing the meat in the oven, but she was cutting salads. And there was a pan of dough on the table. There would be Sebastian and his sweetheart a sweet pie with yesterday's. The woman thought of her son all grown up. He already had a girlfriend, and if everything went well, he might have grandchildren soon. Vanessa heard the sound of the door opening. She quickly took off her apron and hurried to meet her son and the guest. Sebastian introduced his beloved. "Let's get acquainted. Mom, this is Wendy, my fiancée. And this is my mom, Vanessa." The boy was glowing with happiness. His mother smiled too. "I'm so glad. Wendy, come into the hall." The girl was really beautiful. Her dark, long hair fell from her shoulders in bouncy curls. The precise figure attracted the eye at once. Wendy threw off her high-heeled shoes and followed Sebastian, while the woman set the table. Wendy and her son looked at the pictures in the family photo album. Vanessa paused nearby for a moment. When she saw the picture of the family with her late husband and Jenna, who had left them, going to the seaside, the woman felt a little sad at the memory, but she tried to banish the unhappy thoughts from her mind. After all, today was a very important day. Her son introduces her to his girlfriend for the first time. At dinner, Vanessa decided to ask Wendy about her parents. Not that she cared what kind of family she was from or what mom and dad did. She just needed to keep the conversation going. "I'm from a small town. My mom and dad are simple people. My mother sells clothes at the market, and my father works as a construction foreman." Wendy answered without a trace of embarrassment. "There is no place to study, so I came here and met a girl." The girl looked at the boy in love, but Vanessa thought that she did it theatrically, naively, insincerely. Then she tried to change the subject. "What are you going to do after college?" asked Wendy, Dema's mother. "Mom, what's the matter with the girl? Let me eat in peace." Sebastian tried to spare Wendy from mom's questions. "It's no big deal. It's just that your mom wants to get to know me better." The girl interrupted him. "In general, by education, I will be a technologist on sewing outerwear. But frankly, I do not want to work in the specialty. I think that a wife should spend more time with her husband, not to earn money." The word wife cut Vanessa's ear. She thought the girl had far-reaching plans. She already sees herself as her son's wife. On the one hand, there is nothing wrong with that, but on the other, Vanessa was not very pleased. Why? She didn't understand it herself yet, but something enriched her. Wendy seemed to her something fake, like a doll that looks at you with a smile from a store window, beautiful eyes. But there was no human warmth in them. Sebastian noticed how his mother's face changed when she heard the words husband and wife. He decided to take the lead in the conversation. "Yes, Mom. Wendy and I are planning to get married. Next week we will apply at the registry office. We've already picked a date. We'll get married right out of college. Maybe we should get a job first. Start earning money so we can have a wedding reception, for example." Actually, it's his parents' responsibility to marry their son. Vanessa intervened in the dialogue. "And Sebastian and Wendy. It's always been done that way. Parents marry their children, so to speak. They give their blessing, perform the wedding, and then the young people start building their own lives." Vanessa didn't understand what so much offended her in the girl's behavior, in her words and even in her tone. It was pointless to argue. In the past, it was always the parents who organized weddings. But Vanessa is retired. Her husband's in the grave. There are, of course, some savings and money in the account, which the husband saved for a secure old age. But to simply skip out on the financial safety cushion is, at the very least, foolish and thoughtless. Vanessa had no intention of spending the money in her stash. "Say, Wendy," she asked the girl, Do your parents know that you are getting married and that they are going to be involved in organizing the wedding? Are they going to give you money for it? The girl's cheeks flashed Bagram. She could see that she was uncomfortable with the question. They will know when we apply. Why say it before the time? Will they give us the money? Where will they go? I'm their only daughter. If you want, the girl and I will do the math and give you an estimate. And you and my parents will put in a 50-50 split. I think that's okay. Well, normal is normal. Vanessa tried to change the subject of the conversation, which was beginning to heat up the atmosphere at the table. How do you spend your free time, Wendy? She asked. I go out with my friends. Sometimes we go to a club to dance and relax. Began to list her entertainment. Vanessa fought to relax. Strange. What is it that today's young people are so tired of? She clearly didn't like her son's choice, but the woman decided that Sebastian has the right to choose his own wife. And since he loved Wendy, Vanessa was going to clear the table and asked Wendy to help. Shall we bring the cake and the tea set? Not at all. Trying to look friendly, said Sebastian's mother. Mom, let me help you myself. Suddenly, the son volunteered. The boy grabbed the plates and carried them to the kitchen. How do you like her, right? She's a wonderful girl. Wonderful, Vanessa said thoughtfully. She didn't want to upset her son, didn't want to fight with him. The woman thought there was still time to open Sebastian's eyes to his girlfriend. And the first meeting shouldn't be marred by squabbles and figuring out who's right. Papias tea and cake. The young ones are packing up. I'll see Wendy off and come back not with Kuchma, Sebastian told his mother. Vanessa had no time to be bored. She began to wash the dishes, thinking all the time what was so alarming, so repulsive to her from this girl with model looks. Should be pleased. Sebastian will have a very beautiful wife. Not every man can boast of that. He will enjoy going out with her for walks, appearing in the companies of friends, visiting theaters, going on vacations, not stopping to think Vanessa was getting ready to go to bed. When Sebastian returned, she didn't hear, falling into a heavy sleep. The wedding was in late June. After receiving his diploma, Sebastian got a job in a large construction company. He managed to do it not without the help of his mother. Vanessa had been trying to push her son through all his life at the expense of her husband's acquaintances. This time she called one influential official with whom David had once worked and asked for a favor. Her late spouse's buddy did not refuse, having learned that the guy is going to start a family, was happy for him and promised to find a suitable position for him. Don't worry, Vanessa, I understand. It's the times. Who better to help kids get back on their feet than parents? He kept his promise. Sebastian had been going to work every morning for 2 weeks. His mother carefully prepared breakfast for him and waited for him in the evening for dinner. But more often than not, Sebastian would go to Wendy's right after work. We had a lot to discuss about the upcoming wedding, he told his mother on the phone. Go to bed, don't wait up for me. The bride and groom to be made a guest list. Looking at it, Vanessa asked, why didn't you invite Dad's friends with their wives? Son, why is Mom doing this? They're not related to us. We hardly talk to each other. Why? Wendy has so many relatives that I only see them on the list. The woman, perplexed, looked at the unfamiliar surnames. What's the big deal? It's good to have a lot of relatives. We only have Jenna. Nanny has always been like family to us, but she's old and won't go this far. There's no point in inviting Jenna, since you two are fighting. Let's not spoil the party. Sebastian said, Oh yeah, Mom, I was wondering if you'd withdrawn the money from the account. We have to pay for the restaurant, the photographer, the host. And Wendy also wants us to take a white limousine to the registry office. Vanessa sighed. Her son had been telling her for days that he needed money, and she had given him everything in the house. But to the account her husband had left behind when his father died, she didn't want it. Or maybe they'll give you an advance at work, she asked her son. You can spend it on a limousine. What's an advance, Mom? Sebastian waved his hands. Penny on the dollar, and we want everything to be upscale. And Wendy's parents are trying to cut back on Vanessa's spending again. Why don't they give money for their daughter's whims? They agree to pay for half of it, Sebastian said. But right now, they're having temporary difficulties. They'll give it in installments, then after the wedding. Interesting. So the wedding is on me, thought the upset Vanessa. In order not to upset her son, and on the eve of such an important event for him, she promised that tomorrow she would go to the bank and bring the necessary amount. The restaurant was noisy. The guests were partying. The tables were bursting with food, and the wine was flowing. The next day, Sebastian asked his mother for more money. You see, we realize that we should definitely go on a wedding trip, he told his mother. Wendy has never been to the sea in her life, so we want to go to a resort for a week. Don't you think that's a bit much? Vanessa asked. I don't. I feel that mother is against the idea. Sebastian, she would have taken offense for a long time. We are so tired from the wedding preparations, from all this noise and numerous guests, that we should definitely take a rest and unwind. So ask her parents for money, Vanessa said, starting to get annoyed. They'd promised to give half of the money spent on the wedding. At that moment, Wendy entered the kitchen, where mother and son were talking. It was obvious from her face that she had heard everything. Honey, your mom just wants us to go to work before we get married. Work from morning till night. Is that the beginning of a happy family? I don't mind your vacation at all, Vanessa said, barely restraining herself from telling her sister-in-law that it was wrong to eavesdrop. Just pay for it yourself, or ask your parents. Mom, but I told you Wendy's parents are having temporary financial difficulties. Sebastian took the side of his young wife. Did your dad leave you money? Do you have any? I know. It's in the bank and doesn't do any good except for a pittance of interest. Why not give it to us for our wedding trip? Don't you want us to be happy? Vanessa has already realized where the wind is blowing from. Wendy puts her wishes into Sebastian's head, and he, in love to the point of madness, is blinded and runs to fulfill them. And the fact that they'll be happy is a long shot. As old people say, with such a wife you will go to the world rather than find a normal full-fledged family. With a heavy heart, Vanessa went to the bank when she saw the envelope with money. Sebastian rejoiced, poked his mother on the cheek, and ran to his room to make his young wife happy. That week they vacationed at a fancy resort. Vanessa spent it thinking. The apartment was quiet. No one prevented her from indulging in memories of her husband and thinking about her son's future. Having returned from the wedding trip, the young people began to sort out their suitcases with excitement. We brought so many gifts to everyone, the daughter-in-law thought, taking out beautiful silk handkerchiefs, alcohol, some sweets, other things. So it was to my mother that this Auntie Mata to her friends. And you too. Vanessa, we haven't forgotten. The girl handed her mother-in-law a magnet with the image of the resort where they vacationed. Here to hang on the refrigerator. You will remember our wedding trip, she said happily. Mother-in-law took the magnet on a spit and in her hands calmly went to the kitchen and molded the gift on the refrigerator door. She did not want to go back to the young ones. And she poured tea and sat by the window. The next day, when Sebastian left for work, the daughter-in-law said to her mother-in-law, I think it's time for you to move to the cottage. Why is that? Vanessa was surprised. I live here. This is my apartment. And I go to the cottage when I want to be in the fresh air. Especially soon summer will be over. What am I going to do there? What do you mean? Daughter-in-law made a big rounded eyes, like all pensioners. Sit by the TV, relax, knit socks. After all, I'm not going anywhere from my apartment. Don't even count on it. My mother-in-law cut me off. If you want to move to the doctor yourself. And it's not only your apartment, but also my husband for Shebel. How angry the snake, Wendy. So we have the right to decide how we live and who will be around. Don't you realize that young people are uncomfortable at night when you are behind the wall? The conversation is over, Vanessa said and retired to her room. She was shocked by her unscrupulous sister-in-law's demand to leave her 5-room apartment. There was more than enough room here for 3 people. Vanessa's childhood passed here, her happy life with her beloved husband. She has a lot of ties to this apartment. And now some FIFA is going to kick her out. Sebastian came home from work that evening and attacked his mother. Apparently, Wendy had already complained to him about her mother-in-law. "What is this news?" Mom shouted. "He told me, Wendy told me that you are forcing us to move out of the apartment, to live in the country. Can you imagine how inconvenient it is to get to work at 200 hours? And Wendy even has to take the train to go to the store, and then come back with full bags. It's very cruel. I'm your son. I have the right to live in my own apartment, and you shouldn't kick us out." Catching a pause in her son's monologue, Vanessa managed to say, "I didn't kick anyone out. It was your wife who demanded that I move to the cottage. So that's perfectly reasonable. Wendy's right. You'll be more comfortable at the cottage. And we'll come up on weekends, bring groceries. Did it ever occur to you that I have my own head on my shoulders? Why should this girl, who is a stranger to me, dictate where and how I should live?" Vanessa was indignant. "Stranger?" Sebastian looked offended. "So my Wendy is a stranger to you? I didn't think you'd say that, Mom." Sebastian walked out and slammed the door. Summer flew by, and then fall. Vanessa tried not to notice her daughter-in-law, even though she did her best to constantly clash with her mother-in-law. She skillfully inflamed their conflicts and then complained to Sebastian that his mother was completely out of her mind. For example, today she was cleaning the whole apartment, but did not even deign to clean the floor and wipe the dust in their room with Sebastian. "My mother-in-law thinks that it is quite normal for us to live in filth like pigs in a stable," complained Wendy to her husband. "Or yesterday I ate, put my plate in the sink, and then your mom ate. So she washed her plate, and she left mine defiantly lying there dirty. Your mother does everything she can to make our lives a nightmare." Sebastian would run over to my mom's house and start a fight. "Why don't you dust our room at the same time? Didn't you have the energy to wash an extra plate? You know, son, you take care of yourself, don't you?" Vanessa replied, "Your wife could just as easily take a bucket and a rag and mop the floor. A good daughter-in-law would clean the whole apartment herself to help her mother-in-law." "Oh, I'm a bad wife too," screamed Wendy. The girl was eavesdropping in the hallway, leaning against the black Kosenko. "Your mother is crossing all boundaries. She wants to divorce us." Looking reproachfully at his mother, Sebastian rushed to comfort, theatrically clasping his hands and letting a fake tear fall, the young wife. One day Vanessa saw her son packing a suitcase. She was afraid that the newlyweds were going to move out. She wasn't ready to lose her son. The woman worried. She asked, "Are you going somewhere, son?" "Yeah, my mom's sending me on a business trip. I'll often go to the neighboring town. Our company has a new facility there. I'm in charge of it," Sebastian said. "It's a promotion, you know. The salary will be higher." Vanessa was happy for her son. She hugged him, then looked out the window. Mila, a snowstorm. Winter had started unexpectedly fast. A lot of snow fell at once, and the weather came with surprises in the form of cold wind and from Russia. "Be sure to take a warm sweater," her mother said thoughtfully. "You'll probably spend a lot of time outdoors. God forbid you catch a cold." The woman handed her son a knitted sweater, and he put it away in his suitcase. "Thank you," thanked Sebastian to his mother. "Do you know where Wendy is?" "I don't know. She left this afternoon. Still no sign of her. I asked her to get some milk. Wanted you to make pancakes. I'll call her and remind her." "Don't worry, Vanessa." He sat the woman on the couch, sat down next to her and hugged her. At that moment, she felt the warmth of a relative again. The mother put her head on her son's shoulder, and he married early. And he chose the wrong girl to be happy with, she thought. Lately, she had been feeling that Sebastian was suffering, that not everything in their relationship with Wendy was as smooth as he would like it to be. Her sister-in-law returned late. Sebastian started asking her from the doorstep why she had come at such a late hour and where she had been. "At a friend's. "You're sitting up late," the young wife said to her husband. "It's been a long time." We chatted for a while, but they didn't notice how the time flew by. The subway was already closed, so we had to take a cab back. "Did your mom ask you to buy milk?" Sebastian saw that his wife had nothing in her hands but a handbag. As if I had time to go shopping, Wendy replied rudely. "Couldn't she have bought it herself? Mom's not feeling well. You know she has blood pressure. But don't be afraid of anything on me." Tried to soften the tone of the girl. "We'll do without milk today. Moreover, it's late. It's time to sleep." The next day, the son left on a business trip. Since the morning, Vanessa had a bad headache. She took a pill, tied a towel on her head to somehow reduce the throbbing in her temples, and lay down, dozing off. After a while, Vanessa woke up to a loud noise. The woman struggled to get up, went into the kitchen. Her sister-in-law was slamming cupboard doors, dropped a pot from the stove on the new, searched for something in the refrigerator. "What's going on?" Vanessa asked. "What are you doing?" "What? I just got into bed." "How bad is your headache?" "Pressure, I guess." "You're asking what's going on." Wendy yelled at her mother-in-law. I woke up, I wanted to eat, and the house was a mess. "It's lunchtime, and you haven't cooked anything yet. Are you trying to starve me to death?" "You're right," said the mother-in-law, trying to keep her voice down. "It's already lunchtime, and you're a noblewoman. You've only deigned to get out of bed. I don't feel well. Cook something yourself. There's no food. I've been through everything. You wanted to fry some eggs with sausage and tomatoes. My sister-in-law resented me. What were you doing at 12 o'clock? What, you couldn't go to the store and buy groceries? I told you in Russian. I don't feel well." Tried to call the daughter-in-law to compassion mother-in-law, but it was as if she did not hear that the woman needs help. "Why all this to me? Keep yelling and cursing at my husband all the time at home." "No, so I have to take care of his sick mother." "No, old girl, you're not gonna get that from me." Wendy pushed Vanessa in anger. The woman's eyes went blurry. She fell, passed out. The daughter-in-law was afraid she had killed her mother-in-law. She cautiously approached, bent slightly over the woman. "Vanessa, are you alive?" Hearing no answer, she picked up the phone and called an ambulance. Lying in bed in the hospital room, Vanessa thought back on everything that had happened to her since Sebastian had brought Wendy into their home. The elderly woman's life had become a nightmare. Constant scolding, complaints from her daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and tantrums. No, this is not how she envisioned her quiet old age. Vanessa thought her son would help her and her daughter-in-law would become Jenna's second daughter. Vanessa's daughter doesn't call or ask how her mother is doing. She does not even know that Sebastian is married to this unscrupulous girl. The anniversary of David's death is coming up. Will Vanessa be able to recover, to gain the strength to go to the gravesite? There she can cry, share her troubles with her husband. Maybe she would find the answer to how to go on living. There was a soft knock on the ward. The door opened ajar, and a short man with a picky tummy entered. "May I?" he asked, and headed toward Vanessa's bed. "Vanessa, how is your precious health in the Jewish way of speaking?" Kevin asked. "Hello, dear Kevin." The woman rejoiced. No one came to see her, so she was glad that she could not only do what she had planned, but also talk to her late husband's friend. The notary moved a chair over to the woman's bed, sat down, and placed a plump leather folder in her lap. Vanessa politely inquired about Kevin's business. "What business is there?" The notary shook his head. "There are inheritances or marriage contracts. It's always the notary's job to get the paperwork right. And I suppose you called me here on business, too." "Yes, dear Kevin," the woman said. "It seems to me that I will soon follow David Nikolaevich." "Don't talk nonsense, my blooming woman." The man waved his hands at her. "Did he call you from there?" "It's too early, too early. You've made up your mind. What business do you have with me?" Vanessa asked the man to raise the cushion higher so she could sit on the floor. It made her more comfortable. She shared the latest news with an old friend of her husband's. She complained about her daughter-in-law. My son's wife is a completely unscrupulous person, Vanessa said. She only wants money at our square meters in the center of the capital. Do you realize now what kind of a snake my son has harbored? I do, replied the notary. I suppose you want to make a will for Sebastian, David. Not quite, the woman replied. What surprised Kevin? I think she wants to kill me. My son is like a blind kitten. He doesn't notice anything. He believes his Wendy unconditionally. And I don't feel safe. That's why I decided to invite you. My dear, she told about her plans. The man's eyebrows flew upward in surprise, then swore, then fell back into place. In the end, he sketched out a preliminary version of the will on paper, gave it to Vanessa to read. Yes, said the woman, handing the paper back to the notary. It's exactly what I wanted. In fact, precious. Vanessa, did you manage to surprise the old Jew? Kevin said, tucking the paper into the folder. But I will do your will. Everything will be in the best possible way. You just don't worry, so as not to harm your health. The man said goodbye to Vanessa, bowed politely to her roommates and left. The woman closed her eyes and tried to sleep. She was awakened by her son's voice. Mom, how are you? Sebastian was sitting next to her on a chair. He took his mother's hand. I came straight to the hospital when I heard what happened to you. You can't go to all that trouble. Wendy told me everything, not understanding everything. Asked her mother, how did you lift a heavy pan and fall? It's still good that my wife was home, called you an ambulance, went to the hospital with you. I'm so grateful to her. The son stroked his mother's hand, looked at her tenderly. I brought you some fruit. I'm sorry, Wendy. I wanted to make you something to eat, but I didn't wait. I rushed right over to your place, and she's so upset that no one's gonna feed you here. Vanessa listened to all this news about her son's caring wife and couldn't believe her ears. What a hypocrite this Wendy is. They put noodles on Dim's ears, and now she was in the chocolate. They take care of us, mother-in-laws, as if we were their own mother. Don't worry, the food here is decent. Vanessa tried to calm her son. Sometimes my sister Sophia comes to me and feeds me from a spoon. Thanks to her, she's a good girl who helps patients she doesn't know, said Sebastian. But you correct yourself. I have to go. Wendy and I were going shopping. Can you believe it? Turns out she doesn't have any decent winter outfits at all. I'll come back tomorrow. Bye, Mom. The son poked his mother on the cheek and headed for the door. And Vanessa thought with a pain in her heart that her son was wearing the same jacket for the third winter already. But he did not think of himself now to dress up his young wife. The next day, Sebastian did not come to visit his mother. He didn't call until a day later. Late at night, Mom, how are you? He shouted into the phone, trying to shout over the loud music playing. I'm sorry I didn't stop by. It's just that it's my colleague's birthday. We're celebrating. I couldn't not go. I'd have offended a good man. Are you coming tomorrow, son? Vanessa asked. I can't make it. Mom, I'm going on another business trip tomorrow. Sorry, Sebastian's disconnected. The phone rang with a short beep. Vanessa spent a month in the hospital. Gradually, her motor functions recovered. At her rounds, the doctor said she was making progress in her recovery and joked cheerfully that you'd soon be running on your feet, dearie. In the meantime, just rest and follow my recommendations. Yes, I must have fought back, Vanessa said sadly. Now I can't go to the cottage. What will I do there if I barely moved to the grave to my husband? And you do not give up. Hope for the best always gives a good result, the doctor reassured the woman. Everything will be great for you and me. On the day of discharge, Sebastian arrived at the hospital. Before going up to his mother's room, he went to see her doctor. Tell me, doctor, can Mom make a full recovery? The doctor noticed that the boy was anxious, worried about his mother. Absolutely. Don't even doubt it, the doctor replied. We've treated her well. Now it's up to you. It's up to us. Sebastian didn't understand. Vanessa needs care, rest, and massage. Of course, Good nutrition is very important because the patient's body is weakened. The doctor gave some more recommendations on how to take care of the patient. He signed some papers and allowed Sebastian to take his mom home. Her son drove her to the hospital exit in a wheelchair. They walked to the car in small steps, taking short breaks so Vanessa could rest. The guy realized that it would be difficult for them to get home with their sick mother on public transportation, so he called a cab. Looking at his mother's legs, he thought it was good that the house had an elevator. Otherwise, we'd be climbing stairs with her. At home, he helped her undress, put her to bed. "You get some rest, and I'll cook something to eat," said Sebastian. He bought dumplings, and the package is just boiled. "Where's your wife, son?" asked Vanessa. She went to a friend, and they are planning where to go on New Year's vacation. She heard the voice of her son, who went to the kitchen to make dumplings for himself and his mother. Vanessa noted with annoyance that her daughter-in-law did not care about her son at all. She only had entertainment on her mind, which required serious expenditures. When the woman entered the apartment, she noticed that at-home things were lying on the floor, and in the hallway stood an unassembled suitcase of her son, which he took on a business trip. The mother felt bad for Sebastian, but she also chided herself for not being able to change his mind about marrying this version of griping. When he had first brought her into their home, one had to insist to open her eyes. Sebastian, that this cowardly will not make him happy. That's where it is, the longing when a sick mother-in-law and a starving son needs help. Sebastian returned to his mother's bedroom with a plate of hot dumplings. He helped the woman into bed, adjusted the pillow. The son took care of his mother as best he could. Clumsily, the dumplings fell apart, and the slice of bread he brought was clearly not the first freshness. Vanessa was worried that she couldn't go into the kitchen yet, with the former ease of kneading the dough and baking Demkin's favorite pie with yesterday's. "Very tasty," she said, pushing her plate away. "Yes, you only ate 3 dumplings. Let's have some more." Sebastian was encouraged by his abilities. No, Vanessa said no. "I had enough to eat." She once again told her son that the food was very good. Not to upset him, the woman saw that he was already preoccupied with the absence of his spouse and did not want to escalate the situation. To get well, she needed peace, and as soon as she recovers, she will restore order in the apartment and in the life of her beloved son. Through her sleep, she heard Wendy return. She was loudly telling Sebastian that she and her friend had chosen a boarding house outside the city, where there was a huge list of spa procedures. They should definitely go there for New Year's Eve. Sebastian asked her to keep her voice down. Her mom was sleeping in the bedroom, but the girl didn't care. She continued Territorkin without lowering the tone of voice. "Your mother will give us money for the trip," she asked her husband. Sebastian was confused. Before leaving on the business trip, he had brought Wendy's salary and bonuses for 6 months. Had the money run out so quickly? "You think I'm eating air here while you're driving around your facilities on the muzzle of the Sponge Girl, and your mother to feed at the hospital. What was I supposed to buy groceries for? Fruit? Vitamins? If it wasn't for me, she'd be in the hospital for months." "Tisha, calm down," Sebastian told her. "I just thought we have enough money for the party, and we could put some money aside for groceries. I didn't think I'd marry a man who would count every penny I spent and make me account for it." Wendy was mad at her husband. All right. Sebastian tried to hug her. "I'll try to think of something so you and your friend can go to your spa treatments." "What's the date of the trip?" "January 11, Wendy answered. She was already smiling and kissing her husband. Sebastian was thinking, calculating something. "Oh, I'm sorry, darling," he suddenly said. 11. "I'm going on a business trip for a week." "So, continuing to ride in your spouse's ear?" asked Wendy. "My friend and I are going without you. That's understandable. But who will Mom stay with?" "She needs care and supervision," said Sebastian. Wendy was really angry. Now Vanessa didn't even have to listen to her daughter-in-law's every word from Spain. "What on earth is this?" she screamed. "No sooner had I gotten married, and I'm already a crippled cousin. I wasn't a nurse. I dreamed of a happy life with you. And what did I get? Endless days with an elderly mother-in-law. How can you talk about my mother like that? Sebastian was outraged. We can wait a little longer. She'll get better. And we can go wherever we want. You must realize that it is impossible to leave her alone. A nurse or something. Wendy kept yelling. Honey, I don't have any more money. I gave you everything. And you've probably already spent my salary and bonuses. Oh, I'm being scolded for every penny of it. Wendy took quick steps toward her and her husband's room. All right, that's it. I've had enough. I'm packing my bags and going to my parents. They've never denied me anything. Sebastian rushed to stop her, promised that she would definitely go, but later, realizing that at home in her small town, a gray, joyless life without beautiful things and entertainment awaited her, Wendy gradually calmed down and began to arrange the things she had already thrown in her suitcase back on the shelves in the closet. Mom, good morning, greeted Vanessa Sebastian. Walking into her room, I overslept. Wendy and I went to bed late last night, in a hurry to get to work. Wendy, you'll be fed, and in the afternoon the Monsieur K will come. Okay, son, the woman replied. The daughter-in-law was in no hurry to feed her mother-in-law breakfast. She turned on loud music, took a long shower. Having cleaned herself up, Wendy went to the kitchen. She decided not to anger her husband. I could see that his nerves were already on edge, and there was no time to quarrel. Wendy had seen some lovely gold sapphire earrings in the jewelry catalog and was anxious to get them for New Year's Eve. Sebastian had asked to feed his mother, so she was cooking something now. The girl found the kitchen with a glance, opened the door of a hinged cupboard. It was almost completely empty. Wendy found half a bag of buckwheat groats. Great. Boiled her buckwheat porridge. Then she went down to the cafe. There and have breakfast herself, she thought. The girl took milk out of the refrigerator, poured it into a saucepan. At the same moment she smelled a disgusting sour odor. The milk was spoiled. There was a little hesitation. Wendy made the decision to eat it. Nothing would happen to her mother-in-law. She opened the window so that the smell of the passing milk would get out faster. Boiled porridge, put a few spoonfuls of buckwheat in a plate, and went to Vanessa's room. How is your mood? Asked her sister-in-law, pulling a friendly smile on her face. Good, quietly replied the mother-in-law. And I made you breakfast. Smiling, Wendy continued to speak. She handed Vanessa a plate and a spoon. The woman ate a couple of spoonfuls as suddenly she was embarrassed by the vomit. Vomited and flowed on the pillow, dirtying the sheet and blanket. What on earth is this? Indignantly shouted at her mother-in-law the girl. How long will you make fun of me? Now I'll have to clean it all up. The food is ruined. Wendy. About sour porridge, coming to her senses, muttered Vanessa. Nothing is spoiled. The sister-in-law tried to keep her cool. She decided not to quarrel with her mother-in-law, so that the latter, seeing how Wendy looked after her, would give her money. Let's clean all this up now. Wendy helped the woman up, sat her on the bed, and she pulled a clean set of linens out of the closet, carefully separated the bedding from the dirty one, and took it to the bathroom. When she returned, Wendy changed Vanessa's nightgown and tucked her back into bed. The girl sat down next to her. You're probably right. The porridge did smell strange. Wendy began to speak in an angelic voice. I'm sorry, I wasn't looking. You're better now. Vanessa was surprised at the change in her daughter-in-law's demeanor and voice. Don't worry, she replied. Would you like me to get you some hot donuts from the coffee shop? The girl jumped up, ready to run after her mother-in-law's treats. Suddenly, Vanessa smiled. Such behavior of her daughter-in-law. I want some, she said. I also want to have sweet tea with you. Hurry back, I shouted to my sister-in-law from somewhere in the hallway. Wendy. The blink stretched for an hour, even though the coffee shop she mentioned was on the corner of their house. But Vanessa waited patiently for the promised donuts and tea. When her sister-in-law returned, the woman was reading a book. Wendy moved the beds, the coffee table, brought cups and a hot kettle, placed the sweets on a plate. "Here," she said solemnly, pleased with herself. I bought donuts and treats. She looked like Wendy. It was noticeable that she was in a good mood, and she was not going to quarrel with her mother-in-law at all. The daughter-in-law helped the mother-in-law to rise, served a cup with tea. The girl herself sat down next to her on a chair. To Vanessa's surprise, they had a pleasant conversation. It was as if Wendy had been replaced. She was smiling, friendly, not trying to offend or insult her mother-in-law. I never asked, "How did you meet my Sebastian?" asked the mother-in-law. "Can you tell me?" "Of course, it's a very funny story," began the daughter-in-law. "I was waiting for a guy from our group. We were friends. His name was Robert, and he was supposed to bring me my notes. I saw him wearing a white sweater with reindeer on it. So I sneak up on him, and I put my hands over his eyes from behind. He turned around, and then I saw a total stranger standing in front of me, very handsome, with kind eyes. And he was smiling, not realizing what kind of girl had suddenly jumped up to him. That's how they met." Mother-in-law and daughter-in-law laughed at the ridiculous situation. They were having fun. Wendy turned out to be not a bad girl at all. Vanessa thought, I guess what they had before was ordinary, adapting in generations, having to exist in the same space, sharing a household, and putting up with habits. Suddenly, Vanessa hesitated and said, "My late husband and I were introduced by my father. They were colleagues. David looked after me for a long time, but when my parents died, he married me immediately to protect and care for me. He treated me like a precious Chinese porcelain vase my whole life. Never a word or a deed to hurt me. Oh, Wendy, I miss him so much. I'm so worried I won't be able to visit his grave on the anniversary of his death." Wendy, too, sat looking thoughtful, but she had other things on her mind. "Why can't you?" she asked her mother-in-law. Where was I thinking? I can hardly move. And here to the cemetery to go to the train, then walk for a long time. My thoughts or my deeds. But you'll feel guilty for not visiting the grave, won't you? Wendy said sympathetically. And you can't be nervous and worried right now. You need positive emotions and peace of mind to recover. Let me take you to the cemetery. Her sister-in-law's proposal was unexpected for Vanessa, but pleasant. How will you take me? After all, you don't have a car, and you'll have a hard time with me on the train. My mother-in-law asked. I have a good friend from college. I'll ask him. We used to be friends. He will not refuse me, assured the girl. Vanessa, thank you. The mother-in-law took her daughter-in-law's hand, stroked it gratefully with her dry palm. Wendy did not live in Robert's arms. He was an excellent lover. Not like her Sebastian, except he didn't work anywhere. Spent a lot of time in bars and clubs, always asking her friend for money. Sometimes, when the girl's husband was on business trips, Wendy went to have fun with Robert. She herself paid all the bills in the club, and he paid her with caresses and sex that took her breath away. You should have known what I had to put up with that corgi talking. And when I made her bed, I almost ran to the toilet myself. Can you believe that old Jim shits on the bed too? Disgusting grandmother. But you put up with it. Her lover advised her, pressing her to his chest. And just in case she kicks you out of the house, husband will remain, and without a luxurious apartment, and without money. What will we have fun with then? I try, but it's so unbearable, the girl wanted, pulling the sheet over her head and chest. The young man took from the nightstand cigarettes and smoked right in bed. I have a plan to get rid of the old woman, said Wendy. What kind of plan? Asked the guy without looking at her under the guise of going to the cemetery. You and I will take my mother-in-law out into the deep woods and leave her there. She will either freeze to death or be torn apart by wolves. No one will ever know. There's never even any people there. No one will help her. They are too cruel. The boy hesitated. She's still a human being, but she's elderly and disabled. And to sit without money every day, to change her bed and feed her hated mother-in-law, is not cruel, don't you think? Wendy had to convince Robert to help her. Yes, no money is bad, of course, the boy confirmed. But here's the feeling. The power of persuasion, said Wendy. My mother-in-law has an account left to her by her late husband. Apparently, there's a lot of money in there. From that account, she gave us money for the wedding and for the wedding trip. If she's gone, I can manage that money. My fiancé can't refuse me anything, believe me. Are you sure it will work out? Robert asked. You bet I am. I did everything right. Now mother-in-law thinks that I penetrated her kindness, and kindness began to trust me. Oh, you, my Alice. The guy laughed and hid with his head under the sheet. Your mom is very worried about not being able to go to your father's grave on the anniversary, said Wendy Sebastian at dinner. Yeah, you could have hired a cab, but I'll have to leave on a business trip, the boy said sadly. When I get back, I'll definitely take her. But this date is so important to her. She's so upset, and it could be bad for her health. I see you've made up, Sebastian said approvingly. Does your mother praise you so much? I'm glad, Sebastian. Maybe I'll take her out. I'm sorry to see her going through this. She told me how much your father loved her. Sebastian's wife suddenly suggested it. And how do you imagine it? He asked. We don't have a car. I'll ask one of my college friends, or at the very least, call a cab. You'll leave money for your mom and me. Wendy hugged him from behind by the shoulders, kissing the back of his neck tenderly. The boy's breathing became heavy, intermittent. Of course I will, he said, taking Wendy in his arms and carrying her into the bedroom. How I love you, my darling. The next morning, Wendy saw her husband off on a business trip, made tea and sandwiches, took a yogurt out of the refrigerator, and went to her mother-in-law's room. Good morning. She greeted Vanessa when she opened the door. How are you feeling? Ready for your trip? You know, Wendy, it's like my whole soul is excited. I just can't wait to visit the grave of David, my beloved late husband. Thank you for doing this for me. You are a very kind girl with a warm heart. Don't praise, or I'll make you proud, the daughter-in-law said in a joking tone, and placed a tray with tea, sandwiches, and yogurt in front of the woman. Now you need to be well nourished. It's a long journey. You'll need your strength. So let's have a good breakfast. Vanessa obediently ate her yogurt and sandwich and drank all her tea. Hand me my makeup bag from the dressing table, please. I want to tidy up. When David was alive, I never let myself show up in front of him without makeup and in a housecoat. And I have to look good this time. And I'll tell him that you take care of me like my own mother. The daughter-in-law gave her mother-in-law a makeup bag and a mirror. Then she brought a comb and helped her to style her gray hair. May she look beautiful on the day she dies, Wendy thought. She didn't feel the least bit sorry for the older woman. Her sister-in-law, Vanessa, thought only that if she didn't have money, Robert might find another girl, and she couldn't live without him. Wendy's cell phone rang. The girl answered yes. We're ready. We'll be downstairs in 15 minutes. Wait. With a smile, she turned to Vanessa. Well, your carriage has been served, just as I promised. Let's get ready. The daughter-in-law helped her mother-in-law get dressed. They immediately left the apartment, took the elevator down. At the entrance stood a blue foreign car, Robert. The guy got out of the car, obligingly opened the door. This is Robert. Vanessa, I'd like you to meet him. Wendy introduced the young man to her mother-in-law. He and I went to college together. Sebastian knows him too, by the way. Wendy intended to, lied, so Vanessa wouldn't worry. Since the boys knew each other, everything would be fine. That was the plan of the conniving sister-in-law. They left town and drove slowly. Vanessa knew this road very well. It was the same road she used to drive to her country house, which was a little further away. If you turn right at this fork, you will get to our cottage, the woman said. Next came the daughter-in-law from the front seat. It seemed to the woman that her voice became steely, somehow cold. But she quickly got rid of the unpleasant feeling of approaching danger, enjoyed the winter landscape. The road to the cemetery passed near the territory of a huge protected forest. Vanessa remembered how she and her husband often went here for mushrooms. The woman never went far from David because she knew from childhood that there were wild animals in this forest. Everywhere one could see traces of wild boars, elks, wolves. Robert suddenly turned off the road towards the reserve. Why did we turn off? Vanessa got worried. We should go straight ahead, and because we're not going to the cemetery today, Wendy said angrily, not even turning around. We have another excursion planned for today. I don't understand. Wendy, where are you taking me? The woman was scared out of her wits. Into the woods. Dear mother-in-law Mashka, the daughter-in-law answered, I'm finally rid of you. The old cargo. I've had enough of you, sitting on a bag of money, and every penny I have to pull out of you. Now I can use the money from your husband's account any way I want, and Sebastian won't say a word to me. Vanessa felt her arms and legs getting younger. It was warm in the car, though. She drove off, pulling on her mittens. We'll take you to the woods and leave you there. You won't get home, and the wolves will do their job. Don't worry, the cemetery where your husband is buried is close by. You'll rot in the damp earth nearby. Vanessa cried. Wendy, take me home. I'll give you all the money and go to the cottage myself. You and Sebastian will never get in the way. I don't want your Sebastian. Robert and I have been in love for a long time, and I needed Sebastian to stay in the capital and live in peace. Robert stopped the car. There was no farther to go. They pulled the old woman out, took her by the arms, and dragged her by the feet into the woods, drowning in snow. When the deed was done, Vanessa's sister-in-law and her lover walked back to the car. They drove in silence down the road. Suddenly, Wendy said, pointing with her hand in the direction, moving away Vanessa. Well, here come our helpers. They'll do the job. Robert looked in the direction of Wendy's hand. A pack of wolves stood at the edge of the forest. How much time had passed? Vanessa didn't know. She woke up in a snowdrift. There were only tall spruce trees around. It was pointless to call for help, praying to God to give her the strength to get out of this forest. The woman crawled through the snow. The forest was getting dark. From fear and cold, she lost consciousness, and waking up at dawn, she crawled again, not knowing if she would ever be able to get out. Almost completely powerless, the woman suddenly saw that she began to see the forest in the distance. A gap appeared. She gathered all her remaining strength, crawled towards the light, penetrating through the thicket of rays, and then lost consciousness again. When Vanessa woke up, she saw crosses and monuments in front of her. It was the cemetery where her husband David was buried. I will not survive, so at least I will die on the grave of my beloved husband. The woman thought and crawled again. She could find a monument with David's picture on it. She lay down next to it. The woman felt nothing. It was as if her body didn't belong to her. My darling, I'm coming to you. Wait, I'll be here soon. We'll be together again. Vanessa whispered with her lips together, and only one tear rolled out of her eyes, which instantly froze on her cheek, turning into a small mole. Mom. Suddenly the woman heard a voice. It came from far away. Mommy, Mommy, what's wrong? Why are you here? Why are you alone? Oh my God, you're alive. Vanessa struggled to open her eyes. She saw Jenna's blurred, frightened expression. Developed in heaven too, Vanessa thought. The daughter tried to lift her mother up, but the woman was falling back into the snow. Then Jenna grabbed her by the hood of her coat and dragged her straight through the snow past the monuments to the road. The cab driver was waiting for Jenna at the cemetery gate. He saw his passenger dragging the half-dead woman across the ground, jumped out of the car, ran towards her. What happened? He screamed. Who's that? Help me, please, asked Jenna. It's my mom. I found her on my father's grave. The two of them struggled to get the half-dead woman into the car. Drive fast as you can to the hospital, Jenna asked the driver. The man was speeding down the road. A man's life depended on how fast he was going now. Entering the suburban highway from the country road, he increased speed and at the entrance to the city did not notice the traffic police car and the officer who ordered him to stop on the side of the road. Shit, the driver broke free, along with Jenna. They jumped out of the car, ran up to the policeman, and began to explain confusedly that they were taking the sick, frostbitten woman to the hospital and a woman they had found in the cemetery. It took a few minutes for the police officers to understand. How the old woman was treated would determine whether she would live. At the sound of the siren of the police car escorting the car with Vanessa, the cab flew into the hospital courtyard. Sebastian was returning from his business trip in a good, cheerful mood. He already imagined how his beloved wife and mother were waiting for him at home, and he had bought various goodies. They would surely drink tea all together and share the news. Coming out of the elevator, he was surprised to find the door of their apartment ajar. "Wendy, why is the door open?" asked her husband as he entered the hallway. To his surprise, he saw that in the hall were sitting strangers in police uniforms, and his sister Jenna was talking to them. "What's going on?" asked the boy. "Jenna, how did you get here?" "And who are you?" asked Sebastian policeman. "I live here." The guy was confused. "With my mother and my wife. We'll figure it out. Have a seat." The policeman pointed to the couch, not understanding anything. Sebastian sat down and stared at the employee. After handing over the explanation of the frostbitten mother to the doctors, Jenna turned to the policeman and asked what she should do. They offered to drive the girl to the department. "There you will tell everything." The investigator listened to Jenna. On the anniversary of her father's death, she went to visit his grave, where she found her mother lying in the snow, pressing her cheek to the photo of her husband. How she had gotten there, Jenna did not know. The investigator asked his subordinates to find out which cars were captured on the CCTV cameras. On the way to the cemetery, it turned out only one car had passed by. Its license plate was run through the database. The owner turned out to be a Robert Novikov. An outfit was sent to the guy's address. Scared, Robert told everything. He asked to take into account that it was his mistress Wendy's idea to drive into the woods and leave the old woman there to be eaten by wolves. And he only drove the car in that direction. Robert and Wendy were arrested, and after the trial they were sent to prison to serve time for attempted murder of a human being. Vanessa was in intensive care for a long time. Doctors fought for her life. When she woke up, she saw in front of her Sophia, a nurse who had cared for the woman when she was in the same hospital. The other day, Sophia was called to the notary's office. A fabulous bequest fell into her account by a grateful patient.